Hello and welcome back to another full step-by-step PC build guide. Today I'm going to be showing you how to build a PC in the latest case from Corsair. This is the Air 5400 and this is actually a triple chamber case which should offer some great cooling potential. So let's dive in and take a closer look at the case. So the front chamber of the case is where your motherboard and graphics card are going to go, and we've got tempered glass doors on the side and front. You can simply get your hand in at the bottom and pull the door out, and the door in the front opens in a similar way. Taking a look at our front I/O, we've got a power button, a combined headphone and microphone jack, and 3 USB Type-C ports. This one here with yellow is our 20 gigabit per second port, and the other two support speeds of up to 5 gigabits per second. Our case's top panel can simply be popped off from the back. And take a look in from the top, you can see our case's 3-chamber design. So we've got our main chamber here. Our second chamber is over here where we're going to install our power supply and drives. And then we've got this additional third chamber here, and this is for our CPU cooler. So in terms of fan mounting at the top of the case, it's up to 3 120mm fans, and you're going to install these on a removable bracket, which is held on with a screw at the front. So to remove our tempered glass side panel, there's a screw at the top holding it in place. And then with the screw removed, the tempered glass side panel can simply be lifted up and away. So this other side panel doesn't look so easy to remove. So I think the best thing is just to leave it closed. And then if we need to open it at any point for the build, we can open it to get access, but I imagine we'll be able to do most of the build with this panel in place at the front. So now we come on to the interesting bit, the third chamber at the front, and this is designed to house your AIO, and here you're able to mount up to a 360mm AIO, and it's designed to be set as intake. So we can remove this mesh panel. All we need to do is pull it backwards, and we can simply lift it away. So out of the box, there's no dust filter installed, but in the case accessory box, we do get this dust filter, so we can simply slot it into place. So your only radiator mounting slot is at the front, where you can fit up to a 360mm radiator. It is important to say that 280mm radiators are not supported. You've got a removable bracket here. It's held on with 2 screws at the top, and once the screws have been removed, you can simply tilt the bracket out and lift up and away. So you're going to want to mount your radiator at the front set to intake. All the hot air is then going to come into this third compartment. We've got this plastic panel separating it from the main compartment, and the plastic panel wraps on round here. So this is going to separate the airflow from your compartment which containing your power supply and your drives. And then we've got these little notches which are going to encourage the airflow out this gap. Up at the top of this panel, instead of rubber grommets, we've got this vertical polymer brush helping hide any cables passing through it. So this is where you're actually going to pass the tubes from your AIO through to the main compartment, but obviously this gap isn't big enough for your pump to fit through. So you are temporarily going to have to remove this plastic panel to get your AIO tubes and pump routed through, and then you're going to be able to slot it back into place. So to remove the panel, there's a captive thumb screw at the bottom we're going to need to loosen. So we are just going to need to open this door beside it to get the plastic panel out. And then to free the panel up, we simply need to lift it up. We can then pull it backwards, and this is going to allow us to remove it from the case. So this door you can of course just leave in place during the build, but if you do want to remove it, there's one screw at the top similar to the other side panel you need to remove. So moving into our main compartment, and I think the first thing that's going to jump out to you is these plastic air ducts at the bottom and at the top. So the idea behind these air ducts is there to direct all the intake coming in from the bottom straight up and into your GPU fans. So obviously to get access to our bottom fans, you are going to have to remove the air duct. Before we can remove it, we are going to have to move our GPU support bracket up to the top. So it's just a simple matter of moving this thumb screw anti-clockwise. We can slide the bracket all the way up to the top, and then we can simply unclip the air duct from the front and remove it from the case. So you can see at the bottom, Corsair have installed 3 120mm reverse blade fans. They're going to be bringing plenty of cooler in from the bottom of the case. And there is 2 different versions of the case. No matter which one you get, you're going to get 3 120mm reverse blade fans at the bottom. This is the fancy version where these fans connect up to the iCUE link hub, which is included with the case. So the fans are pre-installed on a removable bracket at the bottom. There's probably no reason whatsoever to remove it, but I'll show you how to do it for completeness. There's one screw at the front you're going to need to remove, and then it's just going to be a simple matter of tilting the bracket up and freeing the fans at the back to remove it. And take a look in from the bottom, you can see we've got a dust filter over our main chamber's intake, and it can simply be pulled out from the side for cleaning. And again, at the top of the case, we've got another plastic duct, and this will be directing all the hot air coming out your GPU up and out the top of the case. and the fans that we mount at the top are going to encourage that. Again, this is removable. We simply need to free the duct up from the front. We can lower it down and remove it from the case. The final fan mounting slot is at the back, where it is possible to mount up to a 120mm fan. Now, only part of this fan is going to be over the vented area. Remember, our glass panel from the side wraps around to the back, so part of the fan will be overlapping that glass panel. To mount the fan at the back, you are going to have to use these brackets which come in the case accessory box. So the first step is to install the brackets to the fans using the included fan screws. Then you can set the fan into place at the back of the case, and we'll secure it into place at the back before the screws with the rounded head. So popping our tempered glass side panel back into place, you can see that really only half of this fan is going to be functional and the other half is going to be blocked by the tempered glass panel. So really, I think the only reason you're going to want to do this if you like the aesthetics of the fan at the rear, because from an airflow point of view, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Half the fan's going to be blocked, and already if you just install 3 fans at the top set to exhaust, because you got the 3 fans at the bottom set to intake, you're going to have balanced airflow in the main chamber without the rear fan. So in terms of motherboard support, the case will support motherboards up to E-ATX in size, and it's good to see we've got additional cutouts if you want to go with a back connector ATX or micro ATX motherboard. And to help hide a gap to the right hand side of your motherboard, Corsair include this magnetically attached seam panel. Simply slots into place, and that's going to make things look really clean. If you want to go with a CPU air cooler, the maximum height supported is up to 180mm. If you are planning on going with an E-ATX motherboard, you are going to need to remove the GPU support bracket. So we take a look in from the other side, you can see there's one screw we're going to need to remove. And then with the screw removed at the top, you can simply tilt the GPU support bracket into the case and lift it up to remove it. And that's then going to make an additional space for an E-ATX motherboard. And then over to the right hand side of the motherboard, instead of rubber grommets, we've got more of this polymer brush, which should do a great job of hiding any cables that you route through from the other compartments. A bit of a pity I'm using a back connector motherboard, because I would be keen to test this out. You can see at the rear of the case we've got 7 horizontal expansion slot brackets. And in terms of graphics card support, the case supports graphics cards up to 430mm. And with such large graphics card support, it's good to see Corsair include a GPU support bracket. To adjust it, simply turn the thumb screw anti-clockwise. That's going to allow you to slide the bracket to where you want it, and then simply tighten it up again to hold it in place. There's a little rubber pad here to help protect your graphics card, and if you do find the bracket is catching on your GPU fan, in the case accessory box there's an additional rubber pad with double-sided adhesive. You simply stick it further up here. It's going to support the frame of your graphics card, taking this bit here away from your fan. So moving to our last compartment, and this is where you're going to install your power supply and your drives, and again a lot of your case cables are going to route through here. So you're not going to have to worry about space here. Behind the motherboard we've got 134mm of space. At the top here your power supply is going to be installed, and the case supports full-sized ATX power supplies up to a maximum length of 200mm, and your power supply is simply going to screw in at the back. We've got all our case cables here. It's good to see they're colour matched to the colour of the case, and we've got plenty of Velcro cable straps to help manage them. So in terms of routing our case and power supply cables, we've got these 2 large cutouts here. We're going to bring them through. You're then going to be able to pass them through these brushes to the main compartment. And remember, we are going to have this little bit of plastic here separating them from our AIO compartment. So I've got the more expensive version of the case, and the fans in it connect up to the Corsair iCUE link hub, and this cable's already connected to our front fans. There's a digital port at the top where we can install our AIO or any additional fans into the hub, and all we're going to need to do is power our hub by plugging in a 6-pin PCIe cable, and there's a USB cable we need to plug into a USB 2.0 header on our motherboard. Now this hub is attached magnetically, and we can simply pull it off our hard drive cage. And you are going to need to move the hub somewhere else in the case if you want to install a 3.5-inch drive. So to remove the drive cage, there's 2 captive thumb screws at the back we're going to need to loosen, and then we can simply slide the drive cage forward to remove it. So in the drive cage itself, you are able to mount up to 2 2.5-inch drives, and then you're simply going to secure it into place at the back with 4 of the small screws that come in the case accessory box. And you'll see you've got a cutout at the bottom for plugging in your I/O cables. It is possible to mount a single 3.5-inch drive on the front of the drive cage. This means you are going to have to move your hub, which is mounted here, somewhere else. And the other important thing to remember, if you want to install 2.5-inch drives on the back, you're going to need to install them first, because the 3.5-inch drive is going to block the 2.5-inch drive screw holes. So it's just a simple matter of setting your 3.5-inch drive into place. And then you're going to use 2 of the large rounded screws on each side to secure the drive into place. To open our socket cover, we need to push this lever down and out, bring it all the way to the middle of the motherboard, and then we're going to be able to open the socket cover up. Holding our CPU by the edges and making sure we've got the text the correct way up, we're going to lower it carefully down into the socket. And once we're happy it's sitting correctly, we can go ahead and close the socket cover. Then as we close this lever, the white bit of plastic will pop off, and we'll put it into our motherboard box for safekeeping. So our CPU cooler isn't going to use the stock clips, it's just going to screw straight into our backplate. So we can remove the stock clips, they're each held on with 2 screws. To remove our heatsink, there's a little lever here we need to push in, and then we're going to be able to lift the heatsink up and remove it. And we need to remove the plastic protection from the heatsink. We can then insert our M.2 SSD into the slot, and we'll go ahead and flatten it down, and this little clip is going to hold it in place. I'm not planning on reinstalling our heatsink just yet because you see it blocks our middle screw hole, so we'll put it in place once we've installed the motherboard in the case. So likewise, but even though I'm not planning on installing any further M.2 SSDs, our bottom screw holes are hidden by this bottom heatsink. So I'm going to need to remove it. We'll simply push the lever in at the back. We can lift the heatsink up and remove it. Next, we're going to start our motherboard into the case, line that up with the standoffs at the back, and then we'll secure it into place with 9 of the screws with a rounded head from the case accessory box. And then we can go ahead and replace the heat sinks. And you'll notice we do have a little gap over to the right hand side of the motherboard, so I'm going to take that magnetically attached panel and slot it into place. Next thing to do is get our case cables plugged in, and because I've got a back connector motherboard, all the connectors are on the back. Now the only thing I'm noticing is this panel here is going to get in the way of me showing you the cables. And it does make the cables a little bit awkward to plug in, so I'm going to free the cables up from the Velcro cable straps and then remove the panel. So our HD audio cable is going to go into this connector down the bottom right hand side of the motherboard, so we'll go ahead and plug the cable in with the HD audio text facing up the way. There's 2 USB 2.0 headers at the bottom of the motherboard, so I'm going to take the USB cable coming from our Corsair iCUE link hub and plug it in. Our front panel connectors are going to go into the pins on the right hand side of this header here, and we're going to need to plug it in with the front panel text facing down the way. Our USB 3.0 cable is going to go into this header here, so it's just a matter of getting the cable lined up with the header and then pushing into place. Then we've got our front panel type C header, so it's just a matter of lining the cable up with the port and pushing into place. We're now ready to install our power supply, and I've gone ahead and plugged in the cables that we're going to need. So I plugged in a 24-pin motherboard cable, 2 8-pin EPS cables to provide additional power to our CPU. I plugged in a 12-volt 2x6 cable to power our graphics card, and I've also plugged a standard 8-pin PCIe cable to power our Corsair iCUE link hub. So we can go ahead and set our power supply into place, making sure the fan is facing out the way. And we'll go ahead and secure the power supply into place using the screws that came with the power supply. So we've got both an 8 and a 4-pin EPS connector at the top right of the motherboard. So we can take one of our 8-pin cables and simply split it into 2. And we're going to plug this into the 4-pin connector. And then we can take another 8-pin connector and plug it into the connector beside. Our 24-pin cable is going to go into this header here, so we'll go ahead and line it up with the motherboard and push into place. Last thing to do is power our Corsair iCUE link hub, so we can take the 6-pin PCIe cable and plug it into place. That's all the cables I'm going to need to be plugging into the left-hand side of the motherboard, so I can go ahead and replace our cable management bracket. So next thing for us to do is install our case fans, and I'm going to be installing 3 120mm fans at the top of the case set to exhaust. So we turn the fans around, you'll notice we've got an electrical connector at the top and a dummy connection at the bottom. And to connect the fans up, we get 2 different plastic connectors. There's ones with electrical connectors in it, and the other is just a dummy bit of plastic. So the ones with electrical connectors we can push into the fan at the top, and the ones with the dummy plastic connectors in at the bottom. Now our fans are going to connect magnetically, so all we need to do is bring them into contact. So we go round to our final fan, and again we'll add some additional connectors in. And then again line this up with the fan and push into place. We can then take one of the cables that comes with our fans and simply push it into place. We can then set our top fan bracket into place, and we'll secure it with the included fan screws. We can then lower our top fan bracket into place, and we'll secure it with the screw. So I'm planning on plugging the other end of this cable into our fans on the AIO. I'm going to plug another fan cable into the fans on the bottom, and I'm planning on plugging this cable into the bottom of the fans on our AIO. So although it's good that our AIO comes with the fans pre-installed, for this particular build we're actually going to want to install them on the other side of the radiator. So the first job is to remove all the fans, and we'll install the fans on the other side of the radiator. And then we need to set our front fan stroke radiator bracket into place, and we'll secure it back in place with the long radiator screws. So I just sized this up in the case, and with the screws all secured through the middle of the bracket, the radiator won't actually rotate into place. So what I'm going to do is bring the screws down towards the bottom as far as it goes. And then we can retighten all the screws. The only additional thing to do with the IO is to install the AMD bracket. Out of the box it comes with the Intel bracket installed. So the Intel bracket simply pulls off, and then we can slot the AMD bracket into place. If you get the CPU cooler from new, it will have thermal paste pre-applied to the cold plate, so you're not going to have to add anything additional. Just take care not to damage it while you're installing the bracket. So just before we set our CPU cooler into place, we're going to want to plug in the bottom fan. So I'm just going to lift it up. We'll get the bottom fan cable plugged into place. I'm then just going to pass the tubes through to the main body of the case. We'll lift the CPU cooler up into place and get it to catch in the notches at the bottom. I'm then just going to take the fan cable coming from our top fans and plug it into the fans at the top of the radiator, and then we'll push the AIO bracket into place, and we'll secure it into place at the front with the two screws. Now I've had a bit of a problem here. I'm not able to get this plastic air vent guide into place with our AIO where it is. So first thing I'm going to try and do is move the AIO up as tall as it will go and see if it will fit in then. And then this should allow us to slide everything up on the bracket. That does look like there's enough room for it, but I've had another problem, and that is that the guide is going to get in the way of this fan cable. But if we take a look down here, there is a little cutout for it. So all I'm going to need to do is reroute the fan cable to bring it through this cutout. So hopefully now this is going to allow us to get this cover into place, lift it up and lower it down to lock it into place at the front, and then we'll secure it with a thumb screw at the rear. Just before we install our pump on the motherboard, we're going to need to plug in the long cable that comes with our IO, and I'm going to install this with a cable coming out the bottom. So all I'm going to do is route it up around the top, round this bracket here, which is going to help organize the cable towards the top of the motherboard. I can then add some thermal paste to the center of the CPU. Remember, if you're using the cooler from new, this will be pre-applied, so you can skip this step. And then all we need to do is line our pump up with the motherboard, and we're just going to want to tighten each corner up in turn. Then I'm just going to pull the cable in around the pump and out of the way, and then we're going to route it up and through to the back of the motherboard. And the tubes for this build, I'm just going to route them up out of the way at the top. And then all we need to do is plug the other end of the cable into our hub. And at this stage we can replace our air ducts. So I am struggling to get that back into place with our top fans and AIO tubes routed the way I have them. So I'm just going to try and loosen the fans at the top temporarily. And then to install our GPU, we're going to need to remove the second, third and fourth expansion slot cover from the top. And to open the clip in our top PCIe slot, we just need to press the button on the motherboard. So I have had another problem. I've gone ahead and routed our 12 volt 2x6 cable through before installing our graphics card, because there's not going to be space to ring it through once we've installed our graphics card. And the problem is, it's a really big graphics card and the cable is just a little bit too short to reach it. The reason the cable is too short is I'm using one of Corsair's shift power supplies, and although this case isn't really designed for it, I thought I would get away with it. And because the cables are coming out to the top, they're not long enough to reach all the way through to our GPU. So what I will do is link to one of Corsair's standard power supplies in the description, so you won't have this issue. Your cables will all be coming out here. And to solve my problem, I'm going to use a cable extension. So we can go ahead and plug the cable extension into the cable, and then we'll route the cable through to the front. So I just realized if I leave our GPU support bracket all the way down at the bottom, there's going to be no way for me to raise it up because our graphics card is absolutely massive. So what I've done, I've raised it up just enough that I'm able to get a screwdriver in here, and then I'm going to be able to lift the support bracket up. Okay, so we can go ahead and line our graphics card up with the slot, and once we're happy everything's lined up, it's just some firm pressure and it's going to clip into place, and then we'll secure it with the 3 thumb screws we'd removed earlier on. Next thing is adjusting the GPU support bracket. So you can see if I had it all the way down at the bottom, I would never have been able to bring it up. So I can get a screwdriver in here and loosen it up. And then I'm just going to slide it up to where it is supporting our graphics card, and then go ahead and tighten up the thumb screw. So a very important test for any GPU support bracket: spin the GPU fans. And you can see why we check it. This fan is actually catching on the support bracket, and if we had left it in, there's a risk of us damaging our graphics card. So this is where the pad from the case accessory box comes in handy. I've removed the plastic protection from the back, so it should be sticky. And I'm just going to put it on the end here. So the hope in this position, it should push up the plastic frame of the graphics card, but not put any pressure on our fan. Okay, so that additional pad on, the fans on our GPU can spin completely freely. And then we just need to plug our cable extension into the graphics card. So since I installed the motherboard in the case, how many of you have been screaming that I forgot to install the RAM? Well, actually I haven't. I was waiting for a delivery from Corsair and it's just arrived. So this is their light enhancement kit for the kit of RAM that I'm planning on using. So what this is really fake RAM, and it's designed to be installed in the 2 spare slots where you're not installing RAM. So it improves the aesthetics of the build. Obviously it's going to do nothing for the performance of the PC, just make it look better. Okay, so we can go ahead and open the clips in all 4 slots. And I can take one of the light enhancement modules, line it up with the slots and push into place. Then we can take one of the working RAM modules and install it into the second slot. Then another light enhancement kit module. And then finally our last stick of RAM. So that's what it looks like with all the slots filled. So it's up to you whether you want to add this into your build or not. Okay, time for some cable management, and then we'll get our panels back on again. Okay, that's the build complete, and I've got everything set up. If you don't know how to install Windows, the drivers, the RGB software, enter the BIOS, update the BIOS, and adjust all your BIOS settings, I've made another video that covers all of that, and you'll find a link to that video in the description. In terms of the noise and thermals, these were all excellent. Our Ryzen 7 9700X idled at 42 degrees and reached a maximum of 61 degrees during a 10-minute idle 64 stability test. The AORUS Master RTX 5080 idled at 28 degrees and reached a maximum of 57 degrees during the stability test. In terms of noise, we had average noise levels of 32 decibels at idle and 48 decibels under load. So in terms of the temperatures, these are excellent. I used exactly the same motherboard, CPU and CPU cooler in the Corsair 4500X. In that case, the CPU cooler was set at the top, set to exhaust, while in this case with exactly the same hardware, our maximum CPU temperature under load was 5 degrees cooler. In terms of GPU cooling, the last time I used this GPU was in the Montech HS02. In that case, I did have 3 fans under the graphics card bringing plenty of cool air into it, and our GPU temperatures were exactly the same as what I got in this build. So these results are really what I would expect. Having your IO set to intake rather than exhaust is going to significantly improve its temperatures, and the fact that you've got it in a separate chamber, it's going to have no adverse effects on GPU temperatures. In terms of the GPU temperatures, again, this is what I would expect. Unless you're putting an IO at the front of your case and having it set to intake, I wouldn't expect a big improvement in GPU temperatures, and most of your temperature saving is going to be on your CPU cooling. And if you go with a much more difficult CPU to cool than what I've done, you should expect even bigger savings. So the case is available in both black and white from today, and in terms of pricing, it starts at just under $250 US, and that is the version that comes with standard ARGB fans. You're talking an extra $80 for the version that I've got here, with the premium fans at the bottom and the Corsair iCUE link hub included. So in terms of my thoughts on the case, I absolutely love it. In terms of airflow, it just makes sense, and the temperatures show that it does actually work. In terms of aesthetics, it seems to work really well too. I love the fact that you can look through the side and see out the back of the case. I think the way I was able to route the tubes up and out the way at the top worked really well. And initially I thought I was going to hate these plastic ducts, but actually I do think they look quite attractive. In terms of the negatives, I think the first thing to say is that the case isn't cheap, but the build quality is exceptional throughout. Other things to keep in mind is that this is a really wide case, so it is going to take up a large footprint on your desk. In terms of building the case, it is going to be a little more fiddly with those plastic air vents than it would be in a standard case, but I think in terms of the temperatures and aesthetically, it probably is worth the hassle during the build. And the only other thing to mention is not everybody is happy having their AIO in an upright position with the tubes at the top. I'm completely happy with this and I wouldn't have any concerns about it, but just in case you do, I wanted to point this out. So summing up, I'm absolutely delighted with the build I've put together in this case, and I absolutely love this case. When I looked at the reviewer's guide, I wasn't expecting to, but the system I've put together, it looks absolutely stunning, and really delighted with the temperatures and the noise. So although it's not cheap, it would definitely be a case I would consider, providing you've got a wide enough desk to fit it on. So hopefully you have enjoyed this full step-by-step PC build guide. If you have, please remember to give it a thumbs up, and if you're not currently subscribed to the channel, please hit the subscribe button as well.